the Q1 process. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. Everyone is currently on mute. Please use the questions function of GoToWebinar to ask any questions as we're going through this. I'll try to answer them in real time. If there is time at the end, we will have availability to answer any additional questions. This recording or this webinar is going to be recorded and available on our help desk. We currently have 2 articles dedicated to data quality, and in both articles you'll be able to find this webinar and the slides. And that should be available Wednesday, and again, I'll send out an email when that is available. Okay, so today we have quite a bit to go through. So we're going to go through the context of why we're doing data quality and why it's important. We're going to go through missing values, child-only entries, and utilization. Those 3 things are going to be within the data quality report in Business Objects itself. We're going to go through timeliness, which is a separate report that's going to be sent out. Who's participating, the report details, an overview of the entire process, the submission piece of the process. And then we're going to do a live demo of accessing and reviewing the data quality report, and then touch on a couple of troubleshooting steps. In addition to that, we're going to go through EVA reporting, as well as a demo of how to access that reporting, and kind of briefly review what you're going to be looking at via the output of that. And then we're going to go through the resources and the support that we have available, and then save time for any questions. Okay, so to begin with the context of why we're doing this, the Chicago Continuum of Care, the COC, utilizes data-informed approaches to coordinate services and resources in efforts to end homelessness. The quality of data from the Homeless Management Information System, which is HMIS, is a crucial factor in measuring efforts to end or prevent homelessness. The COC depends on all providers, regardless of funding type, to enter accurate, complete, and timely data. This ensures that we have the necessary information to make informed decisions as a community. So due to the importance on this data, in order to maintain data quality, providers in HMIS are expected to participate in the quarterly data quality process that addresses data in the following 4 areas. One of them are going to be missing values or data issues, child-only entries, bid utilization, and timeliness. Again, missing values and data issues, child-only entries, and bid utilization are all going to be found within your data quality report that you're going to run from Business Objects. Timeliness is going to be a separate report that's going to be sent to you. Okay, so to begin, we're going to just start off with the missing values and the data issues. So when you run your reports in Business Objects, the first thing you're going to notice is the table on the summary page at the very top. Within it, you'll be able to see the data elements that are going to be measured, as well as the required 4 column. So you'll be able to see that on the right side of the screen in the screenshot. One thing to really note about this particular table is to be mindful of the required 4 column, because that's really going to identify which clients, of all the clients that are pulling into the report, that particular data element is applicable for. So that column is really important in determining what clients might be causing the error and identifying what needs to be corrected. So with this, no more than 5% of clients enrolled in the project may have missing values or data entry errors, including instances where data not collected is selected. So what this means is that for all of these measures here, or for all of these data elements, if any of them have a 5% or over error rate, then they're going to be marked as non-compliance. So that includes any data errors, and then also missing values. Including in that is going to be if data not collected is selected. Although that is a HUD value, that's still going to be counted as an error on the summary page. Name, social security number, and date of birth includes the errors below, which are going to be client doesn't know and client prefers not to answer. In these instances, those will be counted as an error also. So for name, social security number, date of birth, if they choose data not collected, client doesn't know, client prefers not to answer, those will be considered errors in addition to just missing values. When it comes to destinations, no exit interview completed as well as other will be considered as errors for your destinations. So including the data not collected, no exit interview completed, and other, those will be counted as errors. One thing to also notice in the data element column is towards the bottom, you have data elements for disability, income, non-cash benefit, and insurance. All of those have a time period in which the data is applicable. So if you have clients, or all of your clients should fall within the disability or within the entry pieces of those fields. When it comes to the exit, that's only going to be applicable to clients that have exited the project. So if your clients have not exited, they're not going to be looking to have a disability at exit, income at exit, or non-cash benefit at exit value in their assessment. So those clients are not going to get pulled in. It's only going to be looking at clients that have exited the project. And that's similar to the destination. So no client is going to be pulled into this destination data element unless they truly have an exit date in their enrollment. So that's during the time of the period we're looking at. So if you have a client that's active in Q1 of 2025, but they exited in Q2 of 2025, that's not going to be applicable until the next data quality period. So in your report, they're still going to show as not being exited just yet because we're not looking at the time period in which they were exited. Are there any questions? Okay, I see one. So what should be selected for destination if we do not know where they went? So when it comes to answering destination questions, it's really depending on what actually happened. So if you have or an idea of the destination for the client, then you will want to choose from the available HUD destinations and try to pick the best one that really fits. If it's really true that you just don't know where the client went and there was no interaction with the client before them leaving, then no exit interview completed would be the accurate value. Although it pulls in an error into the report, that's still valid for the client. So that's what you would choose. But again, when it comes to destination, it's really dependent on what actually happened with the client. Okay, so we have another one. What if the client just doesn't come back? If it's unknown, the agency gets penalized. So unfortunately, that's kind of just the way that it's set up for destination. So if a client just leaves and you really don't know what happened, no exit interview completed would be the most accurate thing to choose. Previously, if you would have chose other, thinking that maybe that was a better option to choose, based on the HUD definition of that, it still falls within not a desired answer to choose. So ideally, there's really no way of getting around identifying that you don't have this information. Um, so yeah, you just will have to pick what's accurate. Okay, so we have another question. If a social security number is only missing data, is the entire client considered an error or invalid? So it just really depends on, well, it doesn't. So to your question, all of these data elements are in isolation of each other. So they're not looking at a client to see if they've, met the requirements for all the data elements. It's all based on the cumulative total of who's going to pull in under the required for column. So essentially for social security number, it's looking at all the clients. So if you're missing data in one of the clients, uh, that's only going to just be applicable to that one data element. It's not going to make an error for the entire list of data elements for the client. And then also, it really just depends on how many clients you have in your project at the time of running the report. If you're running this report and you only have 3 active clients, and you miss one, then you're going to be in out of compliance. If you have 100 clients and you miss 3 social security numbers, then you'll be still in compliance. So it depends on the number of clients that are enrolled in your project at the time. And then also, it's not these data elements are in isolation of each other and not um, directly tied to individual clients. That's not the scoring works for this. No problem. Are there any additional questions before we move over to, I believe, child-only entries? Okay, so we have one more. No exit interview completed can imply that the agency doesn't do exit interviews with clients as a matter of course when the agency has no control over this. So I get how that can be interpreted from this. I wouldn't think of it that way. I would think of it as, again, an isolation of what's happening with the client and not necessarily a practice of the project itself or the agency. So if you have a large amount, so let's say all of your clients enrolled, you don't know what happened to them, the exit interview completed, then there might be things that you will want to do internally to kind of hopefully ensure that you're getting that information when clients leave your project. So if it's an emergency shelter and clients are leaving out, there might be a survey that you can do to kind of get what that information is going to be. So where is the client planning on staying the next day? What is, you know, so there's ways to go about it if it's a bigger problem. If it's in isolation, so you have 1 or 2 clients that, they just never came back, so you don't have a way to gather it, then that's fine. But if it's a bigger thing, then I think you might want to look into ways to gather that more consistently. If they exit after the period, does it matter? So we have another question. I'm not, so if you're referring to the the data elements that are at exit, so those are only going to be applicable to clients that have exited within the reporting range. If they exited after January or March 31st, 2025, then they're not going to be included in the data element. In the details tab, you will see that exit date, but it's not being counted towards one of the clients that are going to fall within this particular measure. So we have another question. For audit purposes, our program puts other for undocumented destinations, even when one has an idea where the client is. Are you saying that if we have an idea of where the client went, we should record that as the destination even without documentation? So I'm not 100% sure what documentation you will have for an exit. So just as an example, if a client leaves an emergency shelter, um, unless you're actually getting that information or having to fill out a survey, I don't think there's a way for you to verify where they're going next. So I think it's really dependent on your understanding of where the client is going. Um, but to your exact question, it might be better as a help desk ticket so I can get a better understanding of exactly what you're doing at your agency. Right. So you added something else. So documentation such as a lease. So that's a good example. So for projects such as permanent supportive housing, if you have a lease to document that the client is housed, then of course that's what you're going to want to put. If you don't have documentation that the client is housed or they weren't housed in your project and they just don't show up, then again, no exit interview completed would be the accurate response for that. But again, I think we should talk outside of this webinar. So if you can, please submit a ticket and we can go into depth um, about all of this. Okay, so let's move on to child-only entries. Again, this piece is going to be within your data quality reports itself. Um, so there must be 0 child-only entries. A child-only entry is flagged when the client is under the age of 18, is enrolled in a project without being connected to a parent or a guardian. This can happen usually for 2 reasons. The first case would be that the child was entered separately from their parent or guardian. What that kind of means is that in most cases, the parent or the guardian is enrolled in the project first, and then the child is born, and then they need to get added to that existing enrollment. If that doesn't happen correctly, then the child is created in an enrollment by themselves, and that's how you'll get that child-only entry. And then also, it has to do with the client's date of birth. So if a client is missing a date of birth, they're going to automatically show up as a child-only entry. One thing to kind of be mindful of, if you have, let's say, 2 date of birth issues, and then you also have 2 child-only entry issues, more than likely, it's a client missing the date of birth. There are cases where projects do serve unaccompanied youth under the age of 18. So if you do have that situation, just submit a help desk ticket just so we can account for it. Okay, so the next piece is going to be utilization. So bed and unit utilization must be within the following ranges. So for emergency shelter and transitional housing, that range is going to be between 80% and 105%. For permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing, the utilization range is going to be between 85% and greater. And for safe havens, it's between 85% and 105%. So what this means is that if your utilization is under these percentages, then you're going to be marked as non-compliant or out of compliance. And if it's above 105% for emergency shelter, transitional housing, and safe haven, it's also going to be marked as out of compliance. The utilization for the majority of project types look at how many clients were enrolled in your project on January 12, 2025. That's the point in time date that we're using for this iteration of data quality. So you'll see this date again. As compared to how many bids and units are indicated in your bid and unit inventory. So for project types, emergency shelter, transitional housing, and safe haven, those are going to be the projects where the clients that are being pulled in are going to be one-to-one with the clients that were enrolled in your project during this reporting range or on the date of February 12, 2025. So all the clients that are in your project on that date are going to get pulled into utilization. When it comes to permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing, those projects require that clients have a housing move-in date on or prior to February 12th to be included. So for permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing, if a client doesn't have a housing move-in date, so if the value is null, if the housing move-in date is after February 12th, 2025, or if the housing move-in date is before January or before the client's or before the client's project start date, then they're not going to be included. So those three instances, you might see the clients in your report, they're pulling in because they're included in the other data elements. They're just not going to be included in utilization without that housing movement date. Okay, we do have one question. We are a permanent supporter of housing project and had a single mother enrolled at 17. We had to fill out a child on entry non-compliance form each quarter. Is there anything All Chicago can do so we don't have to do that each quarter? So it really just depends on the project itself because it's not a everyday case where that happens. So we still want to be mindful that it's not happening when it doesn't need to be. So in the cases where you do have these unique situations, it's just best to let us know, instead of us kind of hard setting that and thinking that's going to be the case for every situation. Are there any other questions about utilization? We have one more slide on it, but just before we move on. Okay, so on the right side is just a screenshot of what the utilization table is going to look like on the summary page of your data quality report. As you can see, it's going to be broken out into two separate sections. One is the bed utilization and the other is going to be your unit utilization. When it comes to bed utilization, that's going to be the actual bed inventory that you have compared to the number of clients enrolled. So individual clients enrolled in your project. Again, if it's permanent supportive housing or wrap housing, it's going to be clients with the housing moving date, but it's going to be individual clients compared to the bid inventory list. When it comes to the unit utilization, that's going to be your unit inventory compared to the household count. So not the individual client count, but the count of households that you have. So as long as either bid or unit utilization meets compliance standards, then the project as a whole will be considered compliant for utilization. So both does not have to be in compliance, just one needs to be in compliance, and then overall it'll be marked as in compliance. Okay, so we do have a slide here that just kind of talks about the housing moving date column that was added to the details page. So housing movement date, again, must be added for permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing. In this table, you will be able to see the housing moving dates for all of the clients that are being counted in your utilization percentage. If a client is not being counted, they're going to have a date out of range or it's going to be blank. So if in the assessment where you see a housing moving date, if that value is blank, it's going to show up blank in the data quality report. If you do have a value and in the data quality report it says out of range, then that just means that it happened, the date that you have selected is either before the client's enrollment date, which means that that's an error that needs to be corrected because no housing moving date should be before the date that the client enrolled in the project, or the housing moving date that's added there is after the report or after the PIT date that we're looking at. So again, if they were housed on February 13th, then they're not going to be included in the utilization. In the report, you are going to see that there's two distinct tabs. One is for rapid rehousing and one is for all other project types. If you're running the report and you're a rapid rehousing project and your bed and unit inventory comes back blank, just please submit a ticket to the help desk and we'll be able to work through what that issue is. Okay, timeliness. So timeliness is tracked through an automated report created by All Chicago. This timeliness report will track the timeliness at entry, at exit, at house and moving date, and for shelter services. The timeliness report measures the time it takes to create an element in HMIS. This measure applies even if the entry date is backdated. So you know how when you're creating an enrollment, you can choose any date. So even if you choose to backdate the date, that's not going to fix the timeliness. The report's looking at the actual time that that data was entered into the system. So for instance, if a client originally came into your project on 2/1/2025, but they were not entered into that project into HMIS until 2/4/2025, the information would be considered out of compliance as it took 3 days to indicate that the client was enrolled in the project. Unfortunately, timeliness cannot be corrected. So the report that you are going to receive are more informational than a call to action to do something. So again, there's no corrections that you can make with this. The report that you're going to receive is just going to be for your information on how your project is doing with timeliness. So who participates? All projects, regardless of funding, are required to participate in the quarterly data quality process so long as the project is active and has at least one client enrolled during the reporting range. So please refer to the list of currently active projects that are expected to participate in the data quality process. So we do have an article here that lists all of the projects that are active in the system. And if there are projects that do not enter data to HMIS, they are not required to participate in data quality. So if you have a project and you're entering the actual client data into another comparable database, you don't have to participate in this in data quality. So we have a question, what projects are those? If you can just give me a little bit more details on exactly what you're looking for. Essentially, the projects that you're going to see on the list here on this article are going to be the projects that need to participate in the data quality process. Okay, so the projects that are not required to participate in data quality are projects where the project is active, but they have not started enrolling clients. So if you're a new project that started, let's say January 1st, and your first client got enrolled in February or in April, you're not going to need to participate in data quality because you don't have any data in the system to review. Projects that serve populations that don't where data isn't entered into HMIS, so DV is an example. Those projects also wouldn't participate because there's no data in the system to review. So as long as the project is active and they have at least one client enrolled, the project should be participating in data quality. Okay, so we have another question. I work with LSSI and I have clients who have been working with for some time now since January, but LSSI didn't get access until April. Can these clients still be entered? Yeah, so you can still go in and enter those clients. You'll just have to backdate it. In this instance, if it was that you just didn't have access to the project, just send us a message and we'll make sure that we account for that. Okay, so report details. So this is really just focused on how you're going to be running the report in business objects. So the reports must be generated for one project at a time. The report in business objects itself would allow you to add as many projects as you like. to the parameters, but for submission purposes, only one project per report that's submitted. I do know that there's cases where a project might have, more than one of a certain project type, and they like to run them together for reviewing the data and just kind of going through it. That's fine for internal purposes, but when it comes to the submission, you're only going to want to have one report per project. The reports will be looking at the period from January 1st, 2025 to March 31st of 2025. Within the parameters of the report, is gonna have the end date plus 1 day. So you're gonna see it as going from January 1st, 2025 through April 1st of 2025, but it's not gonna include any of the data that happened in April. It's gonna truly stop on March 31st, but you are gonna see that April date. In the report, the point in time date is set for February 13th, 2025. Again, that's accounting for the plus 1 day. But within the report itself, the data that's going to be pulled in is going to be data based on February 12th. And again, this is available in the report currently. So if you're running the report, you shouldn't have to make any adjustments to the parameters, none of the date fields. The only thing you're going to need to adjust is the actual provider field where you're choosing your project. But everything else is going to be set by default. Okay, and this is just kind of an overview of, okay, we have one question. So do we need to run a PID report for 213 for this data quality period? So no, you're not going to run a PID report. No. So you're not going to run a PID report for the point in time date that we're using for data quality. So within the utilization table, we already have it set for what that point in time date is. So as long as you run the data quality report for the parameters that's already set in the report, you should be good to go. That's the only report that you're going to have to run and submit. Okay, we have another question. I do street outreach, so I know the system of input is entering someone differently when it comes to aliases and non-engagement. Can all 150 plus clients be backdated as well when they still haven't been fully engaged? So you're right. The way the street outreach works, the date of engagement is essentially their project start date. So if you have clients that you have been working with that aren't fully engaged yet, you should still go back and enter those clients in. So if they do become engaged, you can continue with adding in that date of engagement so that they can be included. Within the data quality report, it's only going to pull in clients with a date of engagement because those are the clients based on HUD reporting. When it comes to street outreach, the only clients that are being reviewed for data quality consistency are going to be the clients that have a date of engagement. If they don't have a date of engagement, there's no expectation for data quality. Okay, so just a quick overview of the data quality process. It's going to run from June 9th, which is today, through June 20th. There will only be one round for submission, so providers will only need to send in a data quality report once they are ready to submit their final report. Business objects reports, which can only be downloaded by users with access to business objects, will cover the missing values, child-only entries, and bed utilization. Changes made in HMIS will not be generated in business objects until the following day. This is an important one just because if you're making corrections all the way up into June 20th, if you make any corrections on June 20th, that data is not going to be available in your reports to submit on time, until June 21st, the following day. So if you're going to be making changes, try to get all of those changes made by June 19th. So on June 20th, you can run that final report, and then it includes all of your changes. Timeliness reports will be sent out to ATAs this week. This report is for your reference. Timeliness cannot be fixed and does not need to be submitted via this process. So that's another thing also. When you receive these timeliness reports, you do not need to include them in your email with your other data quality reports. The only thing that should be included in the email is the reports from business objects. Okay, so for the submission process, reports are to be submitted again by June 20th, which is the deadline. You can submit them anytime during the data quality process, so you don't have to wait to the last day to submit. As soon as you're ready, you can send those in. Excel files must be renamed using the Chicago DQ underscore dash underscore year month date template. When you do download that file, you are going to want to adjust the dashes, which are going to reflect the project ID number. These dashes must be 4 digits. So you see 4 dashes, that means that you must replace it with 4 digits. If your project ID number is a 3-digit project ID number, so an example, the ID number is 833, then you're going to want to put a 0 in front of it just to make it 4 digits so that it gets pulled in accurately when you're submitting it. The date fields, you're going to want to replace that with the dates that you're running the report. So the year, month, date, and you'll be ready to submit. But the most important part is just making sure that the file name is correct because the way that we're pulling the reports really depend on these file names being exact. Okay, so now that you have the file downloaded and you have it named correctly, you're going to want to send it via email to the dataquality@allchicago.org email address. My recommendation, we have this email address listed in the slides here as well as in the help desk articles that we have. When it comes to the email address and the subject line, it's always best to just copy and paste it if you want to make sure that you're not or it's exactly right. You can just copy and paste it into your email just to make sure that everything is all aligned. Again, agencies should only be running 1 report per project, but when it comes to submissions, you can include all of those individual reports in 1 email. So you don't need to send multiple emails per project. You can send 1 email, but you must have multiple or you must have an individual data quality file per project. So multiple files, only 1 email. And one thing to note, we do see see this quite a bit, is that PDF files will not be accepted. So if you're downloading the data quality report from Business Objects, they give you a couple of different formats in which you can download the data. It should always be in Excel format, and it should never be in PDF format. If it is, then it's not going to be accepted. Any questions on the submission process? Okay, so the data quality timeline, just we'll go through it really quick, is the start of data quality is going to start today, June 9th. Today is also the webinar. The correction period that providers have to make those corrections are going to be between June 9th and June 19th. Again, June 19th is going to be the last day to make corrections, so you're able to pull the reports on June 20th, with June 20th being that submission due date. The final results will be posted typically the following week, but within the 2 weeks following data quality, it should be available. But again, we'll send out an email once that becomes available so everyone's aware. Okay, so now we're going to go through accessing the data quality report and business objects. Just give me 1 second. Okay, hopefully everyone's still able to see my screen. Okay, so this is the home page for community services for HMIS. So everybody should see this when they log in. There's 2 ways to access business objects to get to the reports. At the very top, if you do have access, you'll be able to see connect to business objects. And then also within reports, at the very bottom, you can access business objects from this tile here also. So if you click on the report or business objects, it's going to open up an additional tab. It's going to default to your home page if you have reports saved as favorites or recently run, you'll see those there. You're going to want to go to your folders. It's going to be within public folder, Chicago Live, and Chicago COC reports, and data quality. So within this data quality folder, there's a lot of reports here. The only report that's related to the data quality process is going to be the Chicago DQ_dash. So this is the same one that we talked about in terms of changing the file name. So this is what it's going to download as. You'll be changing this, but this is the report that you're going to want to run. There's 2 ways to go about it. You can either schedule the report. So you can do that by right-clicking on the report and clicking schedule. It's going to open up an additional window that gives you the parameters for scheduling the report. The file name you can leave as is. When it comes to the destination, you're going to want to make sure that you're choosing your BI inbox, your business objects inbox, so that those reports get delivered successfully. And when it comes to how often the report is going to run, you have quite a bit of capabilities here. You can either set it to be a one-time run. You can set it to be reoccurring. So if you want this report available to you every morning when you come in, you can set it to do so for the time period of the data quality period. You can have it set to daily, every day, and then you can kind of set what time. So the times that are selected here, so we have June 9th at 12:45. This is going to be the time that the first report is going to run, and then it's also going to be the time that the reports are going to start running going forward. So if you want your report to run, my recommendation is to do that first thing in the morning. So if you want it to run at 9 in the morning, you'll have to set it at 9. One thing to also be mindful of is that if you're setting this and you're intending to get a copy of the report today, you want to make sure that you set this time and give yourself enough time to complete the process before this time actually hits. So an example would be it's set right now for 12:45. It's currently 12:47. So if I run this report, more than likely I'm going to miss this time period for today, and it's going to run again tomorrow if I have it, set for future dates, so like the 11th. It'll run tomorrow at this time, but for the day, we've missed that time period already. So you want to just make sure you account for that. So typically what I'll do, I'll just set that maybe like 10, 15 minutes ahead, just to give myself a few minutes to fill this out. Retries, you can always select this. It's very rare that business objects reports fail that are scheduled, but every once in a while there are some things that happen on WellSky's end that causes a couple of issues. The main piece is going to be this reports feature. So this is going to determine exactly how the report's going to run. So when it comes to the format, again, you're always going to want to make sure that you're selecting Microsoft Excel reports. So this is going to give you the entire report. So all of the tables, all of the way that it's configured is all going to pull in the way that we need to review it to be able to gather the data from it when you're submitting it. If you choose data, it's not going to have the data in the tables that's necessary for us to be able to pull those in. So Microsoft Excel reports is going to be what you're going to choose every time. The parameters, so the prompts should be set by default for you. So we have it starting on January 1st, is going to end on April 1st. That's including that +1 day. We have the PIT date +1 day, and then we just have the effective date in the future, which is going to account for any corrections that you guys are making in the interim. The only thing that you're going to want to adjust is the select provider. And this is where you're going to put the provider that you're going to run the report for. You can do that by selecting edit prompt values. And it might take a second, but this is going to pull up the prompts that you're going to use to run the report. And you're able to select the provider from here. If you select apply, it'll show in this table here. So once you have all of your parameters set, you can then click schedule at the very bottom. And once it's scheduled, you should be good to go. And you'll then see that report once it's available on your homepage in your recently run document. So these are going to be your reports that you have scheduled here at the bottom. Just really quick, if there's any reason that you might have scheduled a report on accident and you want to make adjustments to it, I don't know what happened. Let's try that again. I'm sorry. Okay, so if there are reports that you want to make or that you have scheduled that you want to make adjustments to it, you're going to find that in your instances. So if you need to make an adjustment to a scheduled report, you can do that via instances. One thing to note is that if you do want to make an adjustment, you have to actually change the date back to when you first scheduled the report to make that adjustment. By default, it's going to give you kind of the most recent parameters. But outside of that, if it's an older report, you'll have to go back to make that adjustment. So when it comes to the data quality report, you can also run it in real time. That kind of just means waiting for it to populate. So when you do that, you're going to click on the report. It's going to pull up the prompts automatically. Again, the only thing that you're going to adjust is the select provider. Everything else you can leave as default. So for this example, I'm just going to choose our permanent supportive housing project, and we're going to choose run. So depending on how many clients you have or how much data is going to be in your report, the time that it takes for it to run is going to vary. Hopefully this goes pretty quick. Okay, so while we wait for this, let's move over to the help desk just really quick. We're going to touch on EVA in just a bit, but let's go over to the data quality, articles that we have available. So the two articles that we have are going to be the 2025 data quality process overview. This is really just going to go over that overview of the entire process, pretty much everything we've talked about. This is where the article or the webinar recording is going to be located once we update it with this recording. But at the very bottom here, you'll be able to see the submission pieces. So if you have any questions on how the file should be renamed, or if you want to just copy and paste the subject line or the email address, this is where you'll be able to do it from. Right now, we're getting ready to go through interpreting and running the data quality report, but this article goes through pretty much everything that I'm getting ready to cover now. So scheduling the reports and then also just running them in real time. Then it's going to go through essentially all of the tabs as well. So just remember to kind of refer back to this article. If you have questions on the process, that'll be the best place to get that information. So this is what the data quality report is going to look like for you. When downloading the report, you're going to choose the export button here. Again, you're going to want to make sure that it's an Excel file that you're exporting to. PDF, these additional ones are not going to be accepted. Even when choosing Excel, by default, it should default to reports, but if it doesn't and it's set to data, you're going to want to make sure that you're choosing reports. In addition to that, you're going to want to select all reports. It's important to have all the tabs included in the reports that you're submitting. So just make sure that you're clicking all reports, and then you're going to click export. And that's going to give you the file that you'll be able to rename and then include in your email. But just kind of quickly to go through what we're seeing is that here at the top, you'll be able to see the day ranges for the report. Again, by default, it's going to be set this way, but if accidentally you make an adjustment to the dates, you'll be able to identify, the reporting range here at the top that you're pulling the data for. Under is going to be your project name. Again, only one project should be submitted per report. If you're running multiple projects just for your own internal data quality purposes of correcting data, if it's easier that way, that's fine. But when you're submitting a report, each report must only have one project name here. Right below it, you'll see the table, which are going to be looking at the data elements, so the missing values or the data errors. Again, the required for column is very important just to determine who's going to be counted in that particular data element. The next column is going to be your applicable entry, so the count of clients that fall within this range, and then the error count next to it. Again, this percentage is going to highlight if it's 5% or higher. So if that's the case, you'll have it'll just show up in red. Anything in 0 is probably going to be, no errors at all. If it's under 5% and you do have errors, then it's just going to show up just as black text. So that's not going to be considered out of compliance as long as it's not 5% or higher. So just under it is going to be where the child only entries table is going to be. So this is just going to indicate all the clients that are missing child only entries. Right now we have 3. Again, child only entries and date of birth could go hand to hand. If the clients are missing a date of birth, they'll get flagged in both of those tables. So that's something to be mindful of. And then right underneath it is going to be utilization. So again, the way that these tables work is broken out into bed utilization and unit utilization. Is going to be looking at clients enrolled on February 12, 2025. The bed utilization is going to be individual clients to your bed inventory. That's the beds to actual clients. For the unit utilization, that's going to be your unit your units to the households. So not the individual clients, but the households, the count of households. And underneath is just giving you what those utilization parameters are again. The next tab here, I actually have a slide on this. Following this demonstration is going to be the client details key. So this key is really a way that providers can identify what the report is telling them. And then also for every data element that we're looking at, we've provided where that can be found in the assessment or within HMIS. So some things are client profile tab only. So for the name data quality, social security number data quality, those things are going to be found in the client's profile itself and not going to be in the assessment. So if you're looking at assessment and you can't find how to correct this, it's going to be in the client profile. So yeah, this is just good to review, just to get an understanding of what you're going to see in this details tab here. So when it comes to the details, all of the data elements are identified in the columns. So when it comes to the entry date, exit date, those are just going to get automatically pulled in based on what was added for the client. First name, last name is going to also come from, well, first name, last name, social security number, all of this, again, is going to come from the client profile. So any corrections to this needs to be made there. The way that the data quality fields work in name and social security is that if it's blank, it's going to show up as null. If it's inappropriate for what happened, it's going to show up maybe as an invalid social security number. So an example of this would be that for the social security number, there's a full social security number entered, but under data quality, it was selected as partial. So that's kind of a conflict. We have a full social security number in the field, and we have a partial social security number being reported for the data quality. That's going to be flagged as invalid social security number, and that's going to show up as an error. It works the same way for name data quality. So if you are missing one of these, first or last name, but you're putting that it has a full name, it's going to show up as an error. So we have a question: what does DKR mean in the social security number field? So in the client details, we can see that DKR means client doesn't know or client refused. So in the social security number field, if it's showing up that way, then that means that the value that was added for social security number data quality was one of these. So either client doesn't know or client refused. That was what was selected, and that's going to show up in this data quality column here. Date of birth is going to be found within the actual assessment itself. The data quality question is also going to be found in the assessment. The age is just a column that's being pulled in based on the date of birth that was added, but there is no age assessment question, so you're not going to see an error or anything here. This is just essentially for reference to help understand the date of birth a little bit better. Race and ethnicity has been consolidated for some time. We still haven't removed the ethnicity column, the retired ethnicity column. So you are going to still see that in the details tab, but from the top to the bottom is going to be marked as retired. So this is not going to be included in data quality, or it's not going to be looked at. So you are going to see a lot of red in this column, but that's not indicating anything that needs to be done. Gender. So for gender, veteran status, prior living situation, all the way up to the DV experience, all of this is going to be based on your the assessment question. So if the assessment is blank, it's going to be null. If they're choosing a client doesn't know, client refused, data not collected, answer, those are also going to show up in these columns here. When it comes to disability, income, non-cash benefit, and insurance, those are going to be the sub-assessments that are within the assessments. So there's a couple of things that you're going to see here. Is either going to show as null, which means that it's completely blank, or it's going to show as HUD verification, which means that the HUD verification piece of the sub-assessment question itself hasn't been completed or isn't accurately completed, or it's going to show mismatch, which means that the initial sub-assessment or the initial question that's before the sub-assessment. So for disability, it's going to ask, does this client have a disability? For income, does this client have an income? So that initial question, if it's contradictory to what the sub-assessment is saying, then it's going to show up as a mismatch. So if the initial question to income, does this client have an income? If you select no, but then in the sub-assessment, you add in income values, then it's going to show up as a mismatch. Okay, so we have a question. It's actually a really good question. What is that little rectangle at the bottom of your screen that says no data retrieved for? So this is applicable to any business objects report that you might run. There are instances where you'll see data not retrieved, and that doesn't necessarily mean that there's an error with the data or there's an error with the report. What that really means is that and a lot of reports, they're built to accommodate a couple of different things. So for example, this data quality report is accounting for multiple project types, and there's different ways in how we're calculating utilization per project type. So there's a lot of logic in this report that might not be applicable to your particular project. And if that's the case, you're going to see this no data retrieved. So since I ran this project for a permanent supportive housing project, we have logic for rapid rehousing beds. That's not going to be applicable to this project that we're running. So there's no data that was retrieved in that particular set of logic. So that's all that's indicating, and it's not indicating an error. So I would just ignore it, but that's the reason for it showing up. Okay. So for housing movement dates, again, if it's a null value, then that just means that in the assessment, there's nothing added to that particular housing movement date field. If you see a date, then that means that this particular client is going to be included in your utilization. So all clients are included in utilization, even children, additional household members, just not the head of household. So everybody's going to be included in that. So just make sure that the housing movement dates are added. If you see housing movement date out of range of the PIT date, then that's going to indicate one or two things. Either the housing movement date is after the PIT date, so after February 12th, or it's going to mean that the housing movement date that's tied to this project is before the project enrollment date. So there's no case where a client is housed before they moved into your permanent supportive housing project or rapid rehousing project. If there's cases where a client was transferred to your project that was already housed, then the housing movement date should be adjusted to be the date that the project started, or the project start date of the new project. So that's how that will work. There should be no cases where a housing movement date precedes the start of the project. And for destination, again, the destinations will show up here. Other data not, or other no exit interview completed are going to show up as errors. If there's blank values here, just go to check to make sure that the clients that you're looking at actually do have an exit date. If they have an exit date and there's no value here, it'll show up in red as a no. That's a particular value that needs to be added because the client is exited. Length of stay, again, this is just a column that's just for your reference, but there's really nothing that needs to be done with that. Child only entries has a tab on its own. It's going to give you the client ID numbers and exactly who those clients are. Inventory information. So there's two tabs for inventory information. This tab here that we're looking at is going to be for all project types except for rapid rehousing. So for permanent supportive housing, transitional, emergency shelter, safe havens, all of those, their inventory information is going to show up in this first inventory tab. When it comes to rapid rehousing projects, their inventory is going to show up in this tab. So if you're a rapid rehousing project and you're running this report, you'll see a table here with all of your information, and you're not going to see a table here, and vice versa. So if you're a permanent supportive housing project, you'll see a table on this tab, but you won't see a table on this tab. So it just depends on the project that's running it or the project type, where it's going to show up. And then lastly is the additional information. This is just kind of an overview of the parameters that you have set, the end dates, and then the actual date that you ran it. And it just gives you a cumulative total of the clients enrolled. Are there any questions before we kind of move to a different report? Okay. So again, when it comes to troubleshooting, my recommendation is to always review the detailed key to understand where the problem is. In most cases, if you know where to look in HMIS, a lot of the issues that are going to be pulled into the data quality report are kind of easily identified where the problem lies. One thing to be mindful of that's not on this slide, but is to review the history of a question. If you're making adjustments to your assessment values and you're realizing that those changes aren't being reflected in the data quality report the next day when you run it, more than likely it has to do with the history that's tied to the question. So you more than likely have more than one value on the same date and time, and it doesn't know which one to choose. So what you're going to do is you're going to have to go in and remove the incorrect values so that only the valid value remains. But again, review the key, name, data quality, social security number, data quality, and veteran status are the only questions that will be found outside of the enrollment assessment. So if you have errors there, it's not going to be in the assessment. Those are going to be the only things within the profile. Okay. So a new piece to this data quality process is going to be EVA reporting. So during this iteration of data quality, so Q1 of 2025, we are encouraging providers to not only generate and review the data quality report available in business objects, but to also review their project data using EVA. Just to be completely clear, at this time, EVA reports are not required to be submitted to AllChicago as part of the data quality process. But just be mindful that as we continue to refine the process, EVA is intended to be more integrated into what the data quality process is going to be in the future. But just for now, we're just asking providers to get familiar with running these reports, understanding what data is going to be pulled in, and how to utilize these reports to really ensure that your data is accurate and reflects exactly what you want it to reflect. So for this iteration, providers should generate a hashed CSV file from HMIS for the dates of the data quality period. This way, you can kind of get an understanding of the limitations of the data quality report and the benefits of also running this report to get a little bit more in depth of what problems might lie within your project. But then also so that you're working on the same set of clients at the same time. The clients that's going to pull into EVA are going to be the same clients that you're also looking at in data quality. So there are going to be cases where if you're working on both of these things together, that they're going to be something in EVA that gets identified, and once you correct it, then it's also going to get corrected on the data quality report. So running both is really beneficial, and especially to match the date for what period we're looking at currently. When reviewing the reports, there are a couple of errors that might pop up in your data that we think are extremely important that you should be working on immediately to correct. One being overlapping and duplicate enrollments. So usually at the end of the year, I send around duplicate enrollments across agencies to agencies applicable. This is similar to that process in terms of identifying the overlaps and the duplicates, but the reports that you're going to run are going to only be for your project. If you're running EVA reports for your whole agency, for example, if you have 4 or 5 permanent supportive housing projects or emergency shelter projects, it might make sense to run all 4 of those projects together in one EVA report just to see if you have any overlaps between those emergency shelter projects at your agency. But if you're running them just as individual projects, there could still be cases where a client was enrolled in your project more than once. And this would help identify those things. Okay, so we have a question. How do we merge duplicates? Is that only done by you or can it be done by an ATA? So there's a difference between a duplicate enrollment and a duplicate client. So when it comes to duplicate clients, meaning that there's one client that has more than one client ID number, so that they have more than one client profile where data is going to be stored, that would be something that we will merge on our end. You'll submit a request. We have a help desk form that you can fill out to kind of let us know what those duplicate client ID numbers are, and we can go about that process of consolidating it into one client ID number. When it comes to duplicate enrollments, that's something that you're going to want to adjust via the enrollments themselves. So for example, if you have a client that enrolled in your project on January 1st and you didn't exit them out and they came back on January 2nd and you created a brand new enrollment and now both enrollments don't have an exit date, that would be a duplicate or overlapping enrollment, meaning that the time period or the active time period of the client is overlapping with an enrollment with the same enrollment. So that'd be something that you'll fix on your end. The way that you'll do that is either by adding an exit date. So for the example, if we were to enroll them on January 1st and we exited them on January 1st for a later time, and we enrolled them again on January 2nd, that'd be fine because we've established when one enrollment started and ended and when the next one started and ended. Or if it makes more sense to delete the enrollment that was created on 1/2 and just leave the client open from 1/1 to 1/2 and then just exit that one enrollment for 1/2, then that's another way to account for that. So it just depends on the situation of the duplicate or the overlap, what you're going to do. But in 90% of the cases, you're going to be deleting one of those entries. The next piece is going to be your relationships to head of households. So in the report, it's going to identify a couple of different errors that could happen when it comes to households. So either relationships to head of households are not selected, so there's no head of households, there's too many head of households, or in cases where there's a single client and the relationship is set to additional household members. So there's no head of household, but there is something there that would also be flagged in EVA. One thing that we have noticed, which is really important in terms of federal reporting, is the enrollment COC. So for every client enrolled, they should have an enrollment COC of Illinois 510 selected. Right now, it is set as a required question. So going forward, any new enrollments, that should be fine. You'll have to select that to be able to save and exit that assessment. But previously, enrollment COC was not a required question into the assessments. So if you have any clients that have been enrolled in your project for some time, there could be a chance that their enrollment COC isn't filled out. So you're gonna want to make sure you go in and add that in. So I'm gonna go through what all of the steps look like so you can kind of see how to go about generating this report and looking at the various things. But I do have a article here that goes over the details of EVA. And this article is probably the best that you will want to, or this is what you will want to look at in terms of following the steps of how to generate the report. In this article, it also has the link to EVA in quite a few places, so you'll be able to get that there as well. And you can kind of easily go to that article just by searching EVA in the help desk. It's only one article that's related to it. So there's tons of links here that'll take you directly to the EVA site itself. Again, this is a secured site, so you don't have to worry about data being compromised. And then also the hashed CSV that you're generating out of HMIS doesn't have that personal identifiable information in it. So again, read through this article to talk through exactly what I'm getting ready to go through now, but it's just for reference. So we have our EVA site open, and then we also have business or community services open. The report that you're going to run, again, is going to be the hashed HMIS CSV file. If you click on it, you can start a new export. The name of the export, you can name it anything you like. I'll just name it test. For an example, when it comes to the entry data type, so what you're going to select here is depending on what you select for when you do enrollments. So in most cases, most projects are set up to where they're selecting HUD as the entry type. So when you do an enrollment and you're selecting the type, most projects select HUD. If you do select HUD, that's what you're going to choose here. If you select VA when you do enrollment, so if you're an SSVF project or a GPD project and you're funded through the VA and your assessments are connected to VA, you're going to select VA when you're running the report. And that's similar to RIDE, PATH. There shouldn't be any case where you're ever going to choose standard, basic, or HPRP. So VA, PATH, HUD, and RIDE are going to be the ones that are applicable. And from here, you're going to be able to select the provider that you want to run the report for. Going about it this way is only going to allow you to run one project at a time. If you want to run more than one project at a time, you can create a reporting group and, run that reporting group. So any project that's included in that. And then you'll add your start date and your end date. Again, for this iteration of data quality, my recommendation is to run it for the entire period of data quality. And that way, you're not working on separate clients from one report to the other. And then you'll just click run. Let's just choose a provider for example. So when you choose run, you'll see it show in your list of scheduled reports, and it'll say pending. And once it finally starts running, then it'll update the status here. So I did run one ahead of time for essentially the same parameters. I did plus one date, that's just including that last date. So what you're going to want to do when the report finishes is going to say complete. You're going to click download results, and that should save to wherever you have your files saved to. So once you download it, you'll be able to go to EVA, And in the EVA site, you're going to want to click on Upload HMIS CSV Export, which is going to be on the left-hand side. When you click on that, you'll be able to search for the file that you just downloaded out of HMIS. Okay, so I'll click Browse. It'll be this file here, the one from 123. And okay, I think that went. Okay, let's try that one more time. Okay, so you're gonna select Browse. You're gonna select your hash CSV. This is interesting. Okay, so let's just wait for the one that we just ran to finish, and let's try that one. Okay, so you know what? Let's see if I can. Okay, so when you run the hash CSV, you should get a successful message to say that it was accepted. What you're going to want to do is click on Access Data Quality. From here, you'll be able to see the system level errors within your project. And you'll be able to see kind of the duplicate entries, too many clients. So it'll go through what the errors are. High priority errors are going to be the things that you want to fix right away. General errors are going to be, things that you still want to look into. And warnings are not necessarily errors. So it's not saying that something's wrong with the data. It's just saying that it's kind of unlikely that this is the case. So these are going to be things that you're just going to want to review. So to download the actual details of this report, because right now we're just seeing the tables and it really doesn't do us any good to kind of know this. But if you download it, you're going to get a more detailed view of exactly what the problem is. Okay, give me 1 second. I just want to make sure. Okay, so when you download the report, this is what it's going to look like. The first tab is going to have the details, so it's just going to detail out exactly the start and the end date. This is a separate report than the one that I generated for the example. This is just one that I had available. So the dates that you're going to see are different than what we had selected, but whatever dates that you select for the hash CSV, that's what you're going to see here. When it comes to the system summary tab, this is going to identify all the errors that's within your data. So it's going to tell you what type of error it is. Either it's high priority, just a normal error, or a warning. It's going to tell you how many clients fall within that problem, and then also what the issue is. The organizational summary is going to be a duplicate of the system summary unless you're running more than one project. So if you're running more than one project in your organizational summary, you'll be able to kind of see that breakout per project. So the most important part that I think that this includes is the guidance tab. So the guidance tab is going to populate guidance on all of the errors that was found in your data. So if um, so it's not going to populate anything that's not being shown in your data. So if there's an error that's going to be shown, there's going to be guidance for how to correct it and also why it's a problem. So this is really important to kind of review just to understand why it was flagged in the first place. And following that, you'll have these additional tabs: high priority, errors, warnings, and overlaps. So your overlaps tab and your high priorities tab are going to essentially show the same information because overlaps are considered high priority. So they're going to show up in these data issues here. The personal ID that you're going to see in these columns are going to be the client ID numbers. So these are the numbers you'll be able to copy and paste them right into HMIS to go directly to the client and fix whatever the problem is. The same thing for just normal errors. Personal ID is going to be your client ID. Household ID doesn't correspond to anything that you're able to visually see in the display of HMIS, but it's good to have as a reference if you have more than one instance to see clients that should be grouped together. So that's a good way of identifying that. And then the enrollment ID just also helps you understand if the duplicate. So like if you have duplicate enrollments, you have two enrollments on the same day, same exit date, everything links the same. The enrollment ID is going to help you determine to identify them separately. And then warnings are going to be kind of your things that you just want to look into. It's not really saying that that's a problem, but you know, it's saying that it could be an error, or it's unlikely that what is pointing out is valid. And then overlap details is just going to give you those overlaps. And then referral details, you can kind of leave that alone just because that's not really applicable to how we do referrals within the continuum. So the main thing you want to focus on is these high priority and then the error warnings. Okay, I'm sorry everyone, we're going over just 2 minutes, but let me just jump back to our slides here. Are there any questions on EVA? Okay, as we wait for that, let me just go through the user resources. So we do have these two articles available. I showed you what they looked like in the help desk. Once these slides come out, you'll be able to click on them and go directly to them. We do have additional 3 articles that go over sub-assessments, documenting the housing moving date, and relationships ahead of household. These 3 things are typically what causes confusion in some cases. So these are good articles to refer to if you have any questions about those. One thing that we did change this year or this iteration is how we're doing office hours. So now agencies can book dates to meet with the HMIS team from June 9th to June 13th. So it did open June 3rd. So last week providers did have the opportunity to do that. And that's the time that we'll be addressing any questions or any issues with your report. So before booking a session, just please note that all sessions will be done online via Microsoft Teams. We do ask that an ATA or someone with business objects access is available on the call while we go through things. And prior to the call, it's really helpful if you're able to send us a copy of the report that you've downloaded from business objects, or at the very least have that report available at the time of the call. It just helps saves time from having to rerun things, or it just allows us to move through the office hours a little bit more smoothly. So the way to get those office hours is that you have to book them via this link that we have here below. Unfortunately, we're not going to be booking any office hours via help desk tickets or any help desk inquiries. And then one thing to also note is the date for office hours. So office hours is going to end June 13th. So there's going to be no office hours offered the week of submission. So next week, there's going to be no office hours offered. And I believe that's the last slide. So yeah, if there's any questions, I'll stay on for another 5-10 minutes to answer anything that comes in. But again, thank you all for joining. Sorry we went over a couple of minutes, but enjoy the rest of your day. Again, questions, please reach out to the help desk. And then also, if you need any assistance, please take advantage of the office hours. Okay, I don't actually see any questions coming in. So I'm going to end the webinar now. Again, thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the help desk with any questions. If you want to set office hours, please take advantage of the times that we have available. And again, have a great rest of your day. Thank you.